In this tutorial, I will explain how you can place your tiles, how you can make tile maps, tiles, okay, how you can place it, and also how you can spawn it for endless runner game. As you can see, it's are never ending, okay. I'm going to explain it. So without furthering delay, let's get or dive in. So instead of laying around white square, we want to change it with tile map. To do so, I have over here sprite which is cap tile says. I'm gonna give a link in the description. You can go ahead and check that out. So I have over here. So I'm gonna select that sprite sheet, okay, and click on sprite editor in the inspector. Over here we can see those sprites. So what we have to do, we need to cut them all individually, okay. So select sprite mode to single to multiple, okay, and choose pixel per unit to 16, okay, 16 something like that, and go over to filter mode and select bilinear to point of filter, because if you take a close look you can see it seems blurry, so that is the reason. So select filter mode to point of filter, and after doing all of these things click on apply. Okay, now it's cut it off individually. No, now we have to slice it 16 by 16 size. To do so, in the top left you can see slice, click on that and select automatic to grid by cell size, okay, grid by cell size, and put 16 into 16 as you did over here. So let's put 16, then 16, okay, 16 like this, okay, and then click on slice and then click on apply. Okay, click on apply. I'm gonna select this game view one more time, and let's delete this ground for now. Okay, let's delete this ground for now. Instead, let's create another tile. Let's create the tile map. To do so, what we have to do, go over to in the hierarchy, right click on that, okay, right click on that or hit this plus icon and go over to 2D object, then sprites, sorry, not sprites. In the bottom you can see tile map, and in the bottom you can also see this rectangular, so select that. Okay, now it's our tile map. For tile map, let's create a separate folder, okay, to keep it more organized. So go over to assets, first right click on it and then create, and then folder, let's call this folder to tile map, okay, tile map, and into that folder we will place all of our tiles. So select the tile map one more time. I'm gonna drag this grid in the top of hierarchy so we can see it. So we can see individually grids added, as you can see the square sorry, boxes around scene. Okay, so select this tile map over here and click on this open tile palette, okay, and let's create a new tile palette. It says no valid palette, so click on that and create a new tile palette. Let's call this tile palette to a new tile palette to tile and then create. Okay, now it's created. So we will move, we know we will move over to assets. In assets we created that tile map folder, so let's move over to that and select that folder and click on select folder. Okay, so what we have to do, we have to drag the whole sprite in there over here. If I drag it down, so it says drag tile sprite or sprite texture assets here, so we need to drag out there. So I have over here in caps tile set, whatever we split it up, so we can see we just split it up into pieces by 16 by 16. So select that whole sprite and drag it into that over there. Okay, so we will move over to assets. We know we created this tile map folder, so select that and click on select folder. So now it's just dragging all of them. So as you can see, it's now drag it out there. Okay, so you are ready to place your tiles. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna select any of these tiles, I guess. No, I'm gonna select this. You can test. Okay, so I'm gonna do it. I'm just finding the middle one. I'm not able to get it. This is the side by side, and I guess this one. Okay, this one. So I'm gonna place it underneath player, okay, like this. So if you want to place your tiles, you can select this tool. It's called paint brush, I guess. Paint with active brush, or shortcut key for it P. Okay, and if you mess with anything, you have to erase it. To say erase that, you can select this eraser tool in the over here. Okay, it's called eraser tool. So you can, or shortcut key for is T, so you can erase tiles if you mess. And I'm gonna place the tiles one more time. Okay, one more time like this, one more time like this. Okay, and just place your tiles whatever, like what you want. So I'm gonna, oh, I don't think this one. Okay, so I'm gonna select this. So you are ready to place your tiles on, I'm gonna select this one. And if you want to copy this whole tile, okay, what you have to do, you can select this tool. It's called pick or mark. Okay, and shortcut key for is I. Okay, and you can select like this and you can paste it wherever you want like this. Okay, but I'm gonna erase that for now. Okay, now, and what we want to do instead, uh, I'm gonna find the side tiles, side tiles over here we have. I'm gonna put it, no, not this one. It's pretty difficult to find, but once you getting it, it's easy to do. So I'm gonna select, I don't know where is it, it is, okay, so over here. So I'm gonna select this and now it's fine. And if you want to move this tile, okay, tile, what you have to do, you can select this tool. Okay, select this tool and select like this. Okay, select like this, and in the next you have move selection tool and shortcut key for it M, and you can move it anywhere in this in view you can do. I hope you get the idea how it works and how you can do it. Okay, you can ready to place your tile wherever you want, and that is a good thing. I hope you get the idea. Um Once you place your tiles, and now if I hit this play button, the player will fall down due to gravity and it will go through that grid or ground. Okay, because we haven't added any collider to this ground yet, so that is the reason it will go through that. Okay, and we also need to tag that as a ground. So as you can see, okay, it just goes through that ground. Okay, so that is the problem. So what we can do, select that grid. Okay, grid, and then go over to tile map, this basically this tile map, and go inspector. Over there you have to attach a tile map collider. To do so, hit this add component, find there by typing tile map collider. Okay, and attach that. As you can see, and green line individually has been added to these grids of each grids, as you can see. Okay, so we also need to assign this ground or this tile, okay, as a ground tag, or else we won't able to jump on it. So select that tile map, go over to inspector. Over there tag which is untagged, because the player is only checking for ground collider. So that is the reason we need to assign this tile map as a ground tag. Okay, now we assign it. And if you want to collapse it once, this tiles, okay, sorry, this box collider at once, what you have to do, we have to attach another component. It's called composite collider 2D. So click on this head component and find their composite collider 2D and attach it. So by default it's attach a rigid body 2D component, as you can see over here. So what we have to do, move over to rigid body and set body type to kinematic. Okay, and select collision detection to continuous, so it will continuously detect the collision, and select interpolate to which says none to interpolate. Now it's fine. And now if we move over to tile map collider, click on this used by composite, so it will combine at once. Okay, so if I check this one, as you can see, the colliders just combines at once, so it's pretty good thing. Okay, it's pretty good thing. Now if I hit this play button and we can jump on it, okay, we can jump on it and it will land, the player will land top of our these tiles or the ground, you can say, because we added a collider also to this ground. So make sure it you added a tile map collider to tiles, else it will not work. So as you can see, it's working fine. I hope you get the idea how it works. Okay, so what we want to do over here, we will create a first point and the second point. Okay, we will create a first point and second point. Once the player, okay, we also add a box collider 2D to this game object, and we will set is triggered to true. Okay, we will set this is triggered to true. Once the player just trigger with this box, okay, we will spawn a next tile or this crown in the next time over here, so it will be forever loop whenever the player just trigger in. Okay, so what we have to do, let's create an empty game object. Okay, so I go to hierarchy, right click or hit this plus icon and create an empty game object. Let's call this game object to ground parent, or let's call it instead ground. Okay, instead ground, and go over to inspector, and over there select an icon. I'm going to select this one, and what I want to do, I want to drag this point in top of our ground. Okay, top of our ground, basically this will be the first point, or this will be the parent one, just match up. Okay, now it's fine. So what I want to do, I'm gonna drag this ground in the top of hierarchy so we can see it. I'm gonna take this whole ground, okay, whole grid or ground you can say, and take this into adjust, and I'm gonna place it ground on top of ground. Now this grid is a child of our ground. If I move the ground, you can see the child just moving with it also. Okay, so this is the first point you can see, and we will create a next point, okay, over here. So once the player just collide with this ground or trigger with something, we will spawn a next ground from that point. So we have to create that point from where we want to spawn the next tile or next ground. So let's create another child game object in that ground. So select the ground. Okay, first right click on it, then create an empty child game object and leave the Y position as it is. I'm gonna drag this and I'm gonna change the X1 only. So I'm gonna move it over here and select an icon for it to get a visual appealing. So I'm gonna select this screen, something like this screen one. So the next ground I want to spawn from this position, so that is the thing. And this will be, so 0 is the first one, 1 is the second one, so this is the second child of the ground as you can see. So 0 is the first one and this is 1, is means the second child. Let's call this to end point, end point, end point. Okay, end point, and we need to make prefab of this game object because we want to spawn it simultaneously. Okay, once we just trigger in, so we also need to create a box collider 2D. Okay, so to do so, right click on this ground. Okay, and sorry, not right click, select the ground first and hit add component. Find over there box collider 2D. Okay, box collider 2D, and resize the collider as the size of this the ground. Okay, so I'm gonna click on this edit collider. I'm gonna resize is to fit our whole ground like this. So I'm gonna make the size of this box collider as the size of our camera, something like this. Sorry, if I select this ground and click on edit collider, so this one I'm gonna move it over here, just match up and you are good to go. Okay, now it's fine. And what I want to do, I want to click on this is triggered to true. Okay, make sure you just click on that. So so once the player just trigger with this box, as you can see, we said is triggered to true. So the player, if the player just trigger with this box, we want to spawn a second ground from this next point. So we need to grab this reference of the next point as well. Before it, we should make a prefab of this game object. So select the whole ground, parent one. Okay, this one. So if I want to move, I can move it anywhere I want. So what I want to do, I'm gonna go over to transform. I'm gonna set this one to -5, not -5, -6, and this I'm going to set it to -3. Okay, so it's fine. And I'm gonna select this ground and take it to prefab folder, create a prefab folder. Okay, I'm gonna drag delete this ground from this scene view, sorry, assets. Instead, I'm gonna select this ground and take it into that prefab folder. Okay, now it's fine. So let's create a spawner script, ground spawner script. I already have created. If you haven't watched that out, you can go ahead and check that. But for this now, I'm gonna explain it from scratch one more time. So I have created another script. Okay, it's called ground and spawner. So go over to script folder or assets, right click, create C# script, name it to ground spawner or spawner. Select any game object of your hierarchy. So I'm gonna select this camp parent and attach that script to this camp parent game object, which is the ground spawner. You can just take this ground spawner script and directly drag it to add component section, but I'm gonna leave, I already just attached. So let's double click that to open up in Visual Studio. Okay, Visual Studio. So double click that to open up in Visual Studio. So it will take a few moments. So we can see we have start function and update function. Let's delete this update function for now, we don't need it, and also these two namespaces in the top for now. Okay, instead what we want to do, we will create another function that will spawn our tile or the ground, we can say, and we will make it public because we want to call this function from any from other class. Okay, so that is the reason. So let's make it public. For public and void for function, we have to type, let's call this instead next tile spawn, or next spawn next, something like that. Spawn tile instead, let's call it in spawn tile or ground. Make first bracket and some curly brackets. Okay, so what we want to do inside of this function, we want to use this another function, it's called instantiate. Okay, instantiate function, and we know instantiate function will take the game object you want to instantiate as a first argument, and the second argument it will take the position from where you want to spawn, and the third thing it will take the rotation. So we will pass quaternion dot identity, it's basically means no rotation. Okay, it's up to you. So make a double slash spawn now and make it come in. Okay, let's go to top of our class. Firstly we need to assign those variable. Okay, firstly we need the game object we want to spawn instantiate. So in my case, or in our case, if I go to prefab folder, we want to spawn this ground prefab. By double clicking on it we can see, so we want to spawn this ground. Okay, so we need this game object, so let's create a field for it which is public. Let's set it to public, so we can set through inspector that is a game object we know. Let's call this to ground prefab. Okay, ground prefab, and close that off with semicolon. And the second thing we need is the position from where we want to create that, sorry, want to spawn. So let's create a private field instead. Okay, private field, it doesn't need to be public. That will be vector vector 3, you can say vector 3. It has, we know vector 3 has x-axis, y-axis, and the z-axis. Okay, z-axis, let's call this one to next tile spawn pose. Okay, next tile spawn pose, spawn pose, and close that off with semicolon. Okay, so what we want to do is start function. We know start function get call when the game start. So I'm gonna set the position from where we want to spawn. So I'm gonna set the position for the first tile. Okay, for the first tile over here. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just gonna delete it for now, this tile. So instead I'm gonna copy this position, which is -6 in the x, -3 in the y. So I'm gonna delete it for now. Instead we will use that ground spawner script for spawning it. Okay, so in this start function, okay, we will set this next is tile spawn position. Okay, next is tile spawn position, next tile spawn position equal to new. Okay, new vector 3, new vector 3, and we know vector 3 has x-axis, y-axis, and the z-axis. Okay, and close that off with semicolon. So in the x we seen, if we set it to -6, okay, -6, we know it will be over here. And let's set the y, y to -3, we seen it will be over here, means over here. And I'm gonna set this 0 z to 0f. It doesn't need to do with anything with z-axis. So the next tile spawn post, this vector, basically we set the position or assign it in the start of the game, which is -6, -3, and 0, basically over here. Okay, so we will use this instantiate function. Before it, Control S on your keyboard to save your code. Let's move to Unity and select the game parent game object. In there we attach our uh, tiles ground spawner script. So what we have to do, we need to drag the assign, or sorry, we need to drag the ground out there because we don't have any reference, or we don't have the ground to spawn it. Okay, so that is the thing we need to make sure we just assign it as corresponding layers, or sorry, slots. Okay, so just wait for a moment, and we're gonna able to see the field will appear in that ground spawner script. Okay, so just wait for to compile. Can see ground prefab which says none empty. So what we need to drag the ground out there. So now we have the ground prefab. Okay, so drag the ground out there, and let's move to script one more time, and let's remove these two slashes for now. Okay, slashes now, and we know it will take the game object you want to instantiate. So let's pass our ground prefab, and we assign it or we drag it out there. And the second thing, it will take the position. So let's pass our next tile. Okay, next tile spawn pose. And the third thing, it will take the rotation. So let's pass quaternion dot identity. It's basically means no rotation, and close that off with semicolon. Control S to save your code. Let's move to Unity. But before it, we can see we just made the function, we never calling it. So we know this line of code will not be called, and if it's not gonna call, it will not instantiate or will not spawn our ground. So let's call this function for in start function to check it's working fine or not. So let's call this next which is spawn tile function. Let's call it over here, make first packet, and close that off with semicolon. Control S to save your code. Let's move to Unity, and in the start of the game, that ground prefab, okay, that tile will be spawned from here, because we assigned those position as a first in the start of the game. We can see next tile spawn pose equal to new vector 3, and x in the -6, y in the -3, basically means over here. Okay, over here. So just wait for to compile. It's gonna take a few moments, and we are done. Okay, so the tile will be spawned from that -6 in the x position, and -3 in the y position. Okay, so just wait for to compile. Just wait for to compile. Completing domain. Okay, and make sure you made a prefab of that game object, or else you won't able to get it done properly. Okay, so if I now it's done compiling. Okay, down compiling. Now if I hit this play button, the ground will be spawned from here, because -6 -3 position is here. Okay, we assigned that position in the start of the game. We set the position next tile spawn pose, so the should be over here. So as you can see, the ground just spawned over there, but it's not getting or looping any more time. Okay, so once we okay, if I'm gonna delete this enemy for now. Okay, and also this one, so I'm gonna delete it for now. If I drag this over here, so we added a box collider 2D, as you can see, and we also added we set this is triggered to true, as you can see. So when we trigger with this box collider, we want to spawn a next tile or next ground over here. Basically from this point we created an empty child game object. Okay, from there we want to spawn the next tile or the next ground. Okay, so what we need to grab the reference of this position, then we can spawn the next tile from here. So what we have to do, let's delete it for now. Let's open up our script one more time. Let's store the ground, this ground, whatever we have instantiated, into another game object. Okay, and let's call temp for temporary, and let's set equal to this. So we instantiated a ground at this point as a first time. Okay, and with no rotation, and we storing this ground whatever we have instantiated into this temp another game object. Okay, it works like a container. So what we want to do by now, and now we have to get the reference of this position. If I double click on that prefab, we need to get this position. Okay, which is this position. So as you can see, ground is the parent one, 0 is the first child, and this endpoint is the second child. So we have to pass one index. So 0 is the first one is the second one. So we have to get this second point. Okay, so what we want to do over in the next line, we have to get the position, which is temp dot firstly we need to set the position. Okay, we want to set the position for next tile. This next tile spawn, we never gonna set that to at the same position. Okay, we want to set this position, this next tile spawn pose to this position, okay, this position. So we have to set so we will go over to next tile spawn pose, okay, next tile spawn pose, and we will set temp, okay, temp dot get component, and then component is transform. Basically we just moving, we need to get this transform, okay. So we have to type this transform in arrows. Okay, transform, make some first bracket and dot get child, and we know we have to pass one is the second child, and then dot transform, then dot position, okay. So what we're doing over here, we're setting this next tile spawn pose, basically this position over here for next tile, okay, for next tile. So firstly we are moving this ground parent game object, okay. Whatever we have instantiated, we're storing that game object into this temp variable, and after it we're just going this ground, and then we getting the child which is this one. 0 is the first one, as you can see. Temp dot get or component transform, basically we just moving over to this ground transform component, and by this transform component we just getting reference of the second child, as you can see. Dot get child with the one, and we know one is the second child, and by and then we are going over to transform, then position, basically means we just going to endpoint, then transform, then position we getting. So as you can see, we will get the second this position, okay, and we setting that position equal to this next tile spawn. So this next tile spawn post will be our that as this position now, okay, this position now. I hope you get the idea what we are doing. So we also need to call this function, we just calling it one time when the game start. So when we should call this function, okay, so control s on your keyboard to save your code. If I go to player game object, and if we move to unity, so if I drag this ground parent one more time from that prefab folder, so when we trigger when we trigger with this box collider 2D, as you can see, we need to call that function, and we know what that function is doing. If we move to ground spawner, okay, we just spawning that tile at this point now, okay, next tile spawn post. So we need to call this function, and we know this function just instantiating or spawning. So let's move to player script one more time, okay. We will use on trigger enter 2D function for it, because in this ground we said this is triggered to true of this ground game object, okay. So that is the reason. So let's use this on trigger, okay, on trigger enter, on trigger enter 2D function, on trigger enter 2D function. So this function get called when we trigger with something, okay. When we trigger with something, this function get call or get trigger, and we can extract info whatever we trigger with. By going to this other, we can extract info, example for name, tag, collider, rigid body, trail renderer, anything we like. So we want to check, okay, we want to check if we really trigger with this ground or not. Firstly we need to assign this game object which is this ground, which is untagged. So let's select the ground game object, okay, and go over to inspector, over there tag which is untagged. So click on that and add tag. Let's call this one, hit this plus icon, let's call this one box, okay, save it, and let's go to that game object one more time and assign that tag which is untagged to box, and click on overrides and apply all, so it will change in the prefab as well, okay. So what we want to do over here, we assign it that this ground as a box tag, we know, okay. So we want to check if other, okay, if other dot tag, if other dot tag, if it's equal to box, if that is the case, so make some curly brackets. So we know this function get called when we trigger with something, and we definitely gonna trigger with this box, okay, and we assign it this ground as a box tag, as you can see. So we are checking over here if other dot tag, whatever we have triggered it with, if that game object has tag box, and we know this ground has box tag, as we can see, we assign it. So what we want to do, we want to call this function in ground spawner script. So we want to call this function, and we know what this function is doing, it's just spawning the tile over here, as you can see. So let's call that function. So let's move to our player script one more time, okay, and we have to use this find object of type namespace. sorry, this name or this word, and into arrows we have to pass the script name. So in our case this ground spawner, okay, ground spawner. So let's call that function ground spawner and make some first bracket, and in that ground spawner script we made this function. Let's call this out and marked as public, okay, make sure it. So let's call that function. So dot we have to type, and let's call that function which is spawn tile we know, and make some first bracket and close that off with semicolon. Control S to save your code. Let's move to Unity, and we're gonna able to see once the player trigger with this box, okay, the next tile will be spawned from this next point, because we set the next tile spawn post to this point of whatever we instantiated. We're going to that game object child 1, and we're setting that next tile spawn post to that child position, okay. So just wait for to compile and you gonna able to see. So if I hit, let's delete the ground from the scene view now, okay. Scene view now, and go over to camp parent game object, and make sure ground spawner in their ground prefab is out there prefab. If it's not, just drag the ground out there and you are good to go. Now if we hit this play button in the top and we trigger with that ground, the ground will be endless, okay. It will spawn itself from that point which we set the next tile spawn post, okay. I hope you get the idea how it works, okay. So if I now if to so if I hit this play button one more time, just if to focus on it, and you gonna able to see when we trigger in or with that box collider with that box, okay, the next tile will be spawned from tiles ground tile second child, okay, from second child. So now if we trigger, okay, so as you can see, I hope you are getting it. So as you can see in this in view, it's just getting popped out for the next time when we trigger with those box collider, okay. I hope you get the idea how it works, and this is how it works, how you can spawn the ground for endless runner, okay. And if you I hope you enjoy